one of the things that people realize when they come to St. George is that this is a very health-focused town. I mean, we have things like Ironman comes here, we have a marathon that comes here, and if you go around town, you find all kinds of things that are health and nutrition related, and there's a lot of that here. And so we have somebody with us today that I met a couple of weeks ago, and this is Kathy Coate, and she's with Catalyst. It's Catalyst Fitness and Movement, and she works in the health industry. And so wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the kinds of things that you do, and how that, I know one of the things you do is you help women that are in that 40 to 50 year age range kind of navigate the natural changes that happen in life during that period. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you do with that.
Sure. And thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great to be here. So I had my own fitness journey, and that's what got me interested into nutrition. And I'd always been active, but things kind of changed. And so that's when I decided to get dialed in on what is it that I need to do. I thought I could do it on my own, and I just wasn't having any success. So that's when I finally reached out and hired a coach and learned what is it that you actually have to do, and that inspired me to become a certified nutrition coach, which then led me down to the fact that it's not just that piece. And so hormones do play a lot into that as well. And so have expanded my education in that as well to help accommodate women that were in the same situation that I am. So navigating the journey through menopause.
There are so many changes that start happening. I didn't realize that men have a version of that too.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of changes that start happening in people's, they're just body overall, their metabolism, all that stuff starts changing. One of the things I know that becomes a really big deal for people is managing their weight. I started dealing with that when I was in my early 20s. And I had people that listen to my podcast know all about my weight loss journey that I went through a long time ago, and then learning how to make the lifestyle changes and things that have now helped me keep it for 30 plus years. But it's not easy, and there really is. Sometimes you just need some guidance on how to manage that. But you do that kind of thing then. Help people with that, dealing with that.
Yep,
what are the challenges that most people have when it comes to that part of the journey?
There's several things. So with menopause, your hormones are changing, and with that, your metabolism changes. So naturally, after 40, we start losing muscle. That just happens. And if we don't do something about that, that's going to affect our metabolism. But if we're not doing some kind of a strength training program or weight training, then we are going to be losing that muscle mass. And as we lose that muscle mass, now our body composition changes. We have less muscle on our body, and we have more fat on our body. And so it seems like overnight, all of a sudden, we've gained weight. We have a belly all of a sudden. And that's a true thing, where as you are going through the changes in your metabolism, but also increased fat mass, we start to store more on our bellies. And for women especially, we're going to have that storage on the belly. And that is when women usually say, I can't get rid of this belly no matter what I do. So yes, you are gaining weight overall everywhere. We have excess fat, but it just becomes more apparent in that region. So.
And it's interesting, you said something a minute ago that is really important to recognize. One of the things that helps us manage calories, weight, is muscle mass, and losing muscle mass, which uses a lot of the calories that you eat, that can have a really detrimental effect on if you're trying to lose weight. Now, one of the things that we've talked about is that people often overlook the importance of training. And so maybe talk a little bit about that, Because that is something that is missed a lot.
Yeah. I think the challenge for women that are in their late 40s and early 50s is the idea that we have to eat less and move more, but we don't know exactly what move more means, and we get stuck in this dichotomy of eating very low calories and trying to out cardio or do a ton of cardio, which is not going to be beneficial for your muscle mass. So you really need to be focusing on strength training and shifting that focus, because women will say, well, this used to work for me. And yeah, it did. It worked for me as well when we just start to make that shift and we can't rely on the cardio anymore. So really it's about kind of pulling that back. Honestly, I see a lot of women that are doing spin class 3 days a week. Then they go to boot camp outside on Saturdays and they're doing a 3-mile run in the mornings and they are not losing weight. So it's not the cardio that is helping them lose weight. In fact, it's probably holding them back by not shifting over their training into something more strength related. And so I would recommend shifting out of that cardio and moving more into a strength training program. You still need to do some cardio, but probably not as much as you think that you need to do to lose weight. That's going to be primarily diet. But if we aren't strength training, we are losing that muscle mass. That is so important for longevity, but also for body composition and any kind of weight management. So I recommend 3 days a week of a strength training program, and not hours in the gym. 35 to 45 minutes is all you need.
Really?
That's it. That is honestly it. And hitting that would be a full body strength program. Starting with that, and then if you find you have more time available, you can switch over to a full upper-lower split where you're doing upper body one day and lower body the next day, and do that 4 times. It really depends on how much time you have available. That's going to be the most effective workout, honestly.
How interesting. And I was mentioning this earlier, but there are, especially here in St. George, there are so many. I mean, you could walk outside and throw a rock and hit a gym. There are a lot of places like that. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of one that's down on, what's the road over there? Summit. Anyway, I go to Summit, and it's interesting. I'm there.
I do too.
Is that where you go?
Yeah.
I'm there. I go there ridiculously early. I usually get there before 4 o'clock in the morning. But
you'll never see me there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's really interesting watching. I've talked about this on my podcast before, watching the people that are there at 4 o'clock in the morning, because they're kind of what you would expect, people that never stop working out. But, and I wanted to get back to this though, because there's something really important that people don't really appreciate, and it's the whole running and cardio. Because we do think of that as being the thing that's going to help us, but you start talking about, no, this is more strength training. And is this primarily because of the types of muscles that are being used, or is it mainly because of increasing muscle mass?
So, great question. It's almost like a trick question, because for a man, it's going to be completely different. So a man wouldn't necessarily take this approach, whereas women who are going through menopause have this huge stress response. And so just by the going through hormonal changes, we have this stress. And so adding cardio is adding more stress to the body. And so we don't realize how much stress we are under between work, opening up an email, listening to the news can be a huge stressor.
Interesting.
You have kids, we have parents that we're dealing with or caring for, and there's just a lot that women have on their plate, and so many balls in the air. And so if we can leverage some of those things to actually be a positive, a charge rather than a drain. So that's how I look at that. If we're just draining our energy, and this is super common for women that are going through menopause, they have no energy. They just don't have that drive. And so we're taking that energy into something that we think is going to help, when it's actually not the most beneficial. If we could just flip this around a little bit. So yes, having muscle mass on your body is going to help with your metabolism, but honestly, the biggest driver is for that metabolism is to bring down that stress response so that now your body can adapt in a different way. So,
okay, this actually leads us to something really important. You start talking about stress. Talk to me a little bit about mindset, because it seems like that plays such a big part in this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So primarily what we do, yes, we're talking about nutrition. Yes, we're talking about training. But if you don't have the mindset to be open to trying things differently than what you've done before, we get stuck in this trap. Again, this eat less, move more. That's what we that's what we know. That's what used to work. And so we have that mindset, I have to do this cardio. I have to do this. I have to eat 1,200 calories. When in fact, it's the opposite. So undoing years of the diets and the habits and thoughts around certain foods, around the scale. So it's a whole nother piece in addition to leveraging your nutrition, getting a proper training program into place, but also being open and changing your mindset about what we need to do differently. And also saying no sometimes. We as moms, as women, we're like super women. Trying to say no instead of saying yes to everything and putting yourself first is going to be a huge weight off of your shoulders, off of your plate, and just embracing food freedom rather than looking at food as something that we have to restrict. And you hear this a lot, right? I can't have that, or I'm not allowed to have that, or I don't eat carbs, or I'm doing intermittent fasting. And so there's all these things that come up that are actually a huge stressor to the body, but we think that this is what we have to do. And so it's really adjusting that mindset and then embracing food freedom and abundance rather than scarcity and living just trying to get by on 1,200 calories, which is just not enough for your body to run, but especially for it to run optimally. And so that's really what we're looking for, is to optimize your nutrition and your training so that we can then get your hormones into a balanced place. You can feel amazing, you have plenty of energy, libido comes up, and now we're able to lose weight instead of your body is just storing that weight, is hoarding that, and you're just in a super stressed state. And so if we can get that stress response down, a lot of it does have to do with mindset.
God, this stuff is so important. And you start talking about these 1,200 calories, and sometimes we just look at this number, but it's not just because you could eat a whole bunch of cookies and hit your 1,200 calories, and it's not, and that's worse than a different type of 1,200 calories. And so the whole idea of nutrition, you've said that several times now. To talk a little bit about what the value is there and why this is so important, and why it's so important to have somebody that can explain it to you, because we have individual habits, and I think we have cultural habits. Where we all think a particular thing, and yet it's not necessarily right. And so having this knowledge makes a huge difference.
Sure. There's trends, right? So it was fat-free was in the 90s, and then it was Atkins, South Beach, where it was more protein-focused, still less fat. Then we've moved into kind of a weird keto carnivore thing where it's all fat. And we used to be that we would eat 5 to 6 small meals, right? We're going to stoke that metabolism. And now we've shifted away from that into fasting, where we're going long periods of time without eating. So there's definitely trends. And then, like you said, there's going to be the cultural thing as well. I think it's important to honor your culture and to make sure that you are having the foods that you enjoy. And so coming from a point of abundance rather than scarcity, there's nothing wrong with having a cookie, or there's nothing wrong with having a piece of chocolate. Definitely work that into your diet. You absolutely can have those things. Yes, have your vegetables, right? For sure. Have some fruits, have some vegetables, have some whole grains, predominantly making sure that you're getting at least 30% of your calories from protein. And so shifting that, a lot of women, I find they're eating about 20% of their calories from protein and about 50% from carbs. And honestly, if we could just balance that out, you're going to see great changes to your body composition just by making that one change. But I think that's hard for women to do. We're just used to having, even though we're trying to pull carbs away, I hear that a lot. Oh, I don't have fruit. I don't have bread. But fiber is found in carbs. You're not going to find fiber in protein and fat. So it's really important to just have a balanced diet. And that includes having some of those fun things as well. But we get lost on what to even eat anymore because we've heard we can't have these things. So I get it. It's confusing.
And that plays into this whole scarcity mindset that you talked about, which is the can't rather than the can, which can just kind of take you down a bad road.
Yeah.
from a nutrition standpoint and managing your food, et cetera, et cetera. So the other thing I know that you talk about is hormones. And we haven't talked a lot about that here yet. And that is when you get to that point in your life, there is a pretty dramatic change that takes place.
Yeah.
And what kind of impact does that have on you, and what in the world do you do about it?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking that. So as far as the impact, if you can remember what happened in puberty, right, things were just crazy and just very tumultuous. It's the same thing that we're dealing with. Now we have a lack of, estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is the hormone that's going to be calming and helps you sleep. Estrogen is going to when we see things like hot flashes and night sweats, this is due to lack of estrogen. And so these all decline as well as testosterone. So women need testosterone as well, and that really just kind of tanks out. So it will go up and down just like it would with a normal menstrual cycle. But now when we don't have those cycles anymore, it's because we've lost those hormones. And so every woman is going to react differently, but the most common symptoms are going to be hot flashes, night sweats, trouble sleeping, and then we start to see loss of sex drive, that loss of libido. A lot of times we see thyroid issues coming up, and so just fatigue, brain fog, and so there's a whole host of symptoms that come along. Hair loss is a big one, and it's a natural progression. Everyone is going to go through it, and how you react is going to be largely dependent on your lifestyle. So if you're somebody who's highly stressed, you're probably going to be more prone to the symptoms, right? You're going to feel those harder than somebody who is a little bit more relaxed, who has, kind of a balanced diet rather than somebody who's always trying to diet or trying to lose weight. So it's such a balance, and you're never going to have balanced hormones because we're in a time where they're dropping is what's happening. Perimenopause is the state when they're just all over the place. So kind of like puberty.
What did you call it?
Perimenopause.
Perimenopause.
So that's like the premenopause.
Okay.
That's the premenopause phase. And then menopause would be when you haven't had a cycle for 1 year. And now we don't have that anymore. And so now we're post-menopause.
Interesting. So. Okay. Very interesting. So tell me, you work with people all over the place then. You're located...
I'm online, but I live here in St. George.
Right.
But how I deliver is via Zoom.
No kidding. Are all of your clients that way now?
All of our clients are that way, yeah. The training that I deliver is through an app called True Coach. That's where you get your workouts. You're going to know exactly what to do with your workouts. So that's the platform that I use. So it's like having a trainer in your pocket. I am there saying exactly what to do. We also do check-ins, making sure we're looking at form, making sure you're working out appropriately hard. And we use a progressive style of training as far as progressive overload. So that program is always going to be evolving with you. But everything else is online, so via email and Zoom.
Wow, that's amazing. That you and so you, once again, you're able to work with people really all over the world. Then,
Yeah.
So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I want to know what is the most, if you had to point at what is the most common thing you have to deal with, and where have you seen the most success?
I think the most common issue is the women. I never get the woman who's just like, I sit on my couch eating bonbons and I don't do anything. I don't know why I can't lose weight. That's not the client that I work with. They're like, I eat healthy. I'm intermittent fasting. I don't eat carbs, and I'm doing all this activity, and I cannot lose this weight. In fact, I'm gaining. And so that's what happens, is because we get into this spot where we're doing the things that used to work and they just stop working. So what do? We do them harder. I did the same exact thing. I totally did this exact thing. So that, I think, is one of the most common issues, is just not knowing what to do. And when we get into a point where we're looking for so much information, you just Google menopause weight loss, and guess what comes up? You're going to be targeted to heavily through marketing as far as products, and then we're going to be seeing estrogen dominance, or having. There's just so many angles that you can go down, right? Different rabbit holes, and then it just becomes conflicting information, and then you just don't even know what to do anymore. So that's really the approach that we take, is just a more simple approach. Let's leverage nutrition. Let's get your training in a spot, and then we can take a look at what the response is to your hormones. That is always favorable as far as that goes. And so that's where we start to see success. So I will take a woman who's eating 1,200 calories. I'm going to reverse her up to where she should be optimally at her maintenance calories. She's starting to eat 2,000 calories, and now she has more energy. She starts sleeping better. Digestion improves. Libido comes up. And since she's getting the calories that her body needs, now we see fat coming off. We are not in a diet, but the body's response to that is huge. And so we start to see inches coming off. It's not uncommon for ladies to lose in the first 8 weeks. They can lose 5 inches, 12 inches, 20 inches.
Wow.
So this is a lot off of the body, not being in a dieting phase. So there are different phases to nutrition, but we start everybody off in a maintenance phase to get the hormones in balance as much as possible, and just it's more about the metabolism, honestly, because those work together, metabolism and hormones. When the metabolism is running well, hormones start to balance out. And so yeah, it's very
amazing.
I love feeding up my ladies and having them start bringing in all the foods that they took out, and now they're just seeing those inches come off.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, hey, so real quick before we wrap up, how do people get a hold of you? What's the procedure there?
Yeah.
To get started.
I am on all social outlets, but my website is www.catalystfitness.net. So that's Catalyst with a K. And
it's like on the screen, Katalyst.
Yep. I'm at Kathy Catalyst on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I have a podcast called Mastering Menopause, where I talk a lot more in depth about what we just talked about today. And I have a free Facebook group that has just about 6,000 members in it, called No BS Menopause Secrets. And so if you want some more information, I give away so much free information. I want you to have this information. It's how you apply it, and that's where the coaching comes in.
Right. Because
everybody's going to be individual. I'm not, just because I said, oh, this person was eating 2,000 calories, that doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be, So everybody's different. So we take an individualized approach, but the pillars are definitely going to be that nutrition, the training, and then that accountability and mindset.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, hey, thanks, Kathy. It was a pleasure meeting you. It was
Thank you
great
so
having you
much.
here today. So
My
anyway.
pleasure.
All right. So, hey, and thank you for watching us. We're at Utah South Studios in St. George, Utah. And if you are interested in joining us here, get a hold of us on the this platform. Go to utahsouthstudios.com or wherever. We'd love to have you. And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.